Well, did you wonder a little bit about that topic out there? The mystery in Muck. I thought about the luck in Muck, but I thought it's a little too cute, the luck in Muck. The mystery in Muck. So I was looking at jokes about mud and muck, and things like that, and here's the mud joke I came up with. I don't know whether you've heard this before. It's about a husband and a wife. They're driving down a country lane and to visit friends, and they come to a place in the road. It's right by a farm there, a farm field, and there's this big hole in the road, and it's all full of water, and they get stuck in it. Can't get the car out, and they struggle for several minutes, and they just realize that they can't do it, and they notice there's a farmer coming by right about then with a couple of oxen, and the couple asked for help, and he said, for $50 thought he could pull them out of there. So they give him $50. He pulls them out, and there's so they talking a little bit, and he said, farmer said, you're the 10th car I've helped out of the mud today. And the guy said, well, boy, that must keep you pretty busy. Well, how do you find time to plow your fields? They look pretty good. You must work at night in your fields. And he said, oh, no, at night, that's when I fill the hole with water. A little sideline business going in. Mud. The mystery in mud and muck. Muck is just kind of a word for waste material, debris, dirt. Those are some of the synonyms you'll find if you look it up. And it's usually regarded as useless, as messy, as useless stuff, leftover stuff, with something to get rid of, something without purpose or meaning. But in fact, there is a mystery in muck. There's a luck in muck. There's a hidden purpose and a hidden power to generate new life in the mud and the muck. And there's a lot of examples of that in our spiritual teachings and in nature all around us, I think. We did a couple weeks ago, a little mandala workshop. And how many of you participated in the mandala thing? Yeah, it was lovely. And one of the things she gave us a little stencil that we could use to create some lotus petals on our mandala. Kathy Rausch did a mandala workshop for us. And we talked a little bit about the meaning of the lotus flower. It's a very meaningful symbol, particularly in Eastern religions and philosophies. I got some of these to show. Made a few copies. That's a lotus flower. That's lovely. You can pass a little around. I made some copies if you'd like to take a lotus flower. Just sort of send it back. But it's called Padmi in Sanskrit and Tibetan, and the lotus flower is a very cherished symbol in Eastern spiritual tradition because, and it grows naturally in ponds there, but the importance of it is that it starts out rooted deep in the mud and muck in these ponds everywhere. And in order to blossom, it sends it up, and it has to travel through all this darkness out of the mud and the muck, and emerges into this beautiful lotus blossom at the surface. So it has become, for people, a very powerful symbol of birth out of mud and muck, about renewal and resurrection. And the little caption on that little illustration going around is that the most beautiful lotus flowers come out of the deepest mud and muck. It's just sort of a principle of how they grow. Here's a little quote from something I was reading about them online. It starts out rooted deep in mud and scum. The lotus flower's journey from a muddy seed to a glorious blossom offers the hope that something beautiful can grow from suffering. It's a reminder to always trust in the unseen path that leads us to the sun. I think that's interesting. The lotus is a powerful symbol of growth and transformation, of birth and rebirth, and about how that mud and muck actually is fueling the growth that's coming right up out of that experience, the rootedness in the mud. We had a wonderful lesson in this last week, too. We were in Florida last week. We went to Sanibel. We love that nature preserve there. We always take that tram tour. The great thing about Sanibel is that a third of the island, about 6,000 acres, is nature preserve. And you can take tours to see all the amazing birds, and if you're lucky, maybe an alligator. And there's amazing fish life everywhere. They talk about those as the mangrove estuaries. of southern Florida. Their mangrove trees are the basis of it, with these incredible root systems that go down into the mud, and all kinds of microorganisms and so on are drawn to those roots and grow there and eat there. It starts with mangrove leaves. They drop these leaves year-round, and there's a lot of protein in those, and they kind of decompose in there, and then it's like nursery food for fish, you know. And we were told by our guide that something like 70% of the marine life around southern Florida is born right there in those mangrove estuaries, which are kind of a little bit of a mixture of fresh and salt water, and the water's very kind of brackish. It looks kind of reddish and wonderful colors, but it's this really productive ecosystem. There's this, you can go through this kind of educational area there, and they talk about the secret of the mangrove tree estuaries. The secret is detritus. Would you like to say that with me? Detritus. What does that mean? Muck. It means muck. It means mud. It means waste matter. Detritus is a decaying mixture of leaves, twigs, and animal remains. Detritus fuels the entire estuary. That's so fascinating, isn't it? It's the lotus flower teaching. Same thing, same idea. Those estuary waters, all this, it's like a nursery for fish life. They're all born there and then travel out from there. And of course, all these marvelous Florida birds come to feed on the little fish and so on. If you've never seen a roseate spoonbill, you've got to do yourself a favor and go see one. You know, the pink color of them, huge birds, all pink with these big round beaks that scoop up the fish they eat. It's an amazing place to go. Great white pelicans and yellow-crested night herons. These are birds you have to see. We're great bird lovers, as you can tell. It all starts with that detritus of life down there, this incredible marine life and bird life and everything. The secret is detritus. How about that? I think there's a spiritual principle at work there. It's a principle of nature, obviously, but it's also a principle of life, I think, that in the messes, in the failures, in the mud, in the muck, in our lives, there may be something that fuels growth there for us as well. I think there is. I think any of us who have come through some hard times would probably say we brought something out of it with us. We brought something out of it with us that somehow it fueled some new growth or some deeper selfhood or some deeper awareness from having come through it. And in some ways it opens us up to new life and to expansion of our understanding and our selfhood. Jesus, I think, taught this a lot. Jesus had a high tolerance for the messiness of human life. It's wherever he went, he was healing and teaching among the sick and the frail and the troubled and the criminal and the mentally unbalanced. These were the people that he really could speak with and who were really open to him. People who were dealing with some muck in their lives, struggling through some stuff that might not have looked very, very meaningful or useful. And he spoke to people like that. He had the greatest influence among people going through those times. And it makes you wonder why. Were they more receptive? Were they more ready to grow? Were they more ready because they were coming through some hard times? Were they more eager to grab onto some new life and some new wisdom? Jesus was accused as being a friend of tax collectors and sinners. I think they were his favorite people. They were his favorite people. He spoke to them. He was most hurt by them. Not the arrogant Pharisees and the people who had it all worked out and thought they knew what everything was about and what was possible in life. No, he was more in tune with people who were struggling and confused and have come through some hard times and are maybe going through some hard times right now. And very much a part of this teaching was that, you know, the kingdom of God was his perennial teaching, how to experience the kingdom of God. And he talked again and again about it isn't when someplace perfect. It isn't off somewhere else that's perfect and everything is in divine order. It isn't after we die in some place up in the sky. It isn't someplace else now. It's right here among you. It's right here within you, the domain of God. Right here in this mess. right here among whatever we're dealing with, and whatever struggles we're having, and whatever mistakes we're making, it's right here. That was his teaching again and again, and he told people, from the Thomas Gospel, he said, the kingdom of heaven is here, it's spread across the earth, and people do not see it. Right here. We have trouble seeing it because we don't expect to see it here in the muck and in the mess. We don't expect to experience our God connection and what that can mean for us, the kingdom of God, right here in the mess of human life. But it happens all the time, and there are examples of it all the time, all around us. I often look to public figures, people we know as writers or people in the public eye, because their lives are more visible to us, really. But I was thinking of Mark Nepo's wonderful work. I've mentioned Mark Nepo before. Some of you probably read some of his work. I'm trying to think his most recent title, Exquisite Risk or something like that. He's a very popular spiritual uplift, inspirational writer now, many books out, and he does a lot of public speaking. I've seen him on, what's the Soul Stories show with Oprah Winfrey? Super Soul Sunday, yeah, and lots of interviews with him out there online. He started out in life as just kind of a struggling poet. He wrote beautiful poetry. That wasn't what led to his big life's work, though, the poetry. He cultivated his facility with beautiful words that way. But it was as he was working along as a poet, he discovered he had cancer. He had a huge brain tumor, which he denied until it was huge. Until I remember, we tend to do that. We can't believe this muck is happening to us. Isn't that right? Very common experience. And apparently it kind of got so large on his head. One of his friends said, "What are you doing, Nepo? Growing another head?" It's not very funny. But it got him to the doctor to look into it while he still could do something about it. But he had to undergo chemo and radiation and a long healing process. And it was a lot of muck. And somehow through that process, he came through that with more to say and a new way to say it in the world. The books started coming out that offered important guidance for others going through tough times. Books that wouldn't have happened if he hadn't gone through that muck and that mire and that struggle. He wasn't just a poet for kind of a select few anymore. He was a writer for a broad audience of anybody struggling through hard times and needing inspiration and guidance on how to move toward greater freedom and joy in life. All came after the muck of sickness and pain and vulnerability. I think that happens a lot when people experience illness, don't you? We come out of it with something. Some awareness, some deepening of who we are. I like Eckhart Tolle's story of his long battle with anxiety and depression. Chronic depressive individual, was suicidally depressed often, and somehow at a certain point he reached a place where he was determined to kill himself, and he was thinking to himself, I can't live with myself any longer. And for some reason at that very moment, the idea came to him, who am I talking about that I can't live with? Who's the I I'm talking about? Is it two I's? So there's this I am, that's not this I, that's depressive, that I can't stand anymore? And if so, what's that I? And these important discoveries came to him, just kind of rising up out of depression like a lotus flower coming from the bottom of a mucky pond. And it just broke through, surface in that moment for some reason. And he began to really explore that idea of this essential self, this core self, this I that is not depressed and is not anxious. This is this more enduring self, and how do we access that? We access it now, right here, right now. That led to the book, The Power of Now. That has been a transformative book for many, many, many people. And it started out of the muck of depression, chronic depression, and an idea that finally rose up out of that muck. And was a transformative idea for him that he couldn't let go and began to work with and communicate and share with others. New life, new work. and an end to that depressive legacy of ongoing chronic depression, a movement out of that. And now he helps so many other people do that, book after book, and speaking engagement after speaking engagement. He helps other people realize who's your essential self right here, right now, that's never altered, never damaged. Let's look at that self. These are kind of, in our public figures, we see these people, but we've all, I think, had a similar experience at some point or other. We all have some muck in our lives, wouldn't you agree? Anyone not have any muck at all? I don't know, we all come through challenges. I've never met anybody. We've all got some kind of muck behind us, or maybe right now we're working our way through, or experiencing. And in the moment, it's difficult to see that there's anything very meaningful or useful about it. It seems like something to just try to, shake off and get over and, move beyond. But usually, it's not quite that simple a matter. And usually, there's some gift to gain from it, something to discover. But we often don't give ourselves much credit or support in those times. We think we just need to get over it and carry on. I was thinking of the moody teenager I was. I was a very moody teenager up in my room, reading books like Siddhartha by Hess. Anyone reading Herman Hess? And a lot of angst in my reading experiences in those days. A lot of time in my room, a lot of journaling, lots and lots of journaling. That was just kind of who I was as a teenager, and many's the time I thought, I really wasn't the chipper, happy-go-lucky teenage girl I should have been, like other girls at school. God knows, who knows, it would turn out to be that. In fact, that was pretty good preparation for, all that reflecting about life and why am I here, and what's it all about. Well, I do that now. That's what I do for a living. And it kind of turns out that kind of prepared me. That was me germinating in the mud and the muck. So the lotus flower could start coming up about what I was going to do in the world with my interest in words and sharing and looking deeper at what's life about and why do people suffer and what's going on here. That's the mud and the muck I came out of. What kind of mud and muck did you come out of? I think we all had something we emerged from or have come through and maybe are coming through now that is somehow ripening us, enriching us, deepening us, guiding us more toward that flowering like the lotus. And sometimes it takes a while. You don't see it right away. I was thinking of a friend of mine. She's a retired special ed teacher. Had a wonderful career as a special ed teacher in the school system out on the east side in Pickerington. And she was prepared for that work by her upbringing, which I hadn't realized until she was sharing with me what it was like to. She had a little, when she was a girl, her little brother was born with a significant physical disability, required a lot of in-home care, a lot of caregiver support. And so my friend was doing caregiving as a young girl, which felt pretty burdensome at the time, a lot. Instead of out playing with her friends, she had to help give her brother a bath, or she had to help get her brother dressed to go to special school he went to, or it had to help with dinner because mommy was doing all those things. It felt very burdensome for a number of years, the responsibilities she had to meet as a girl, more than she should have had to bear. And yet it prepared her for the person she became that was so good at caring for others and could help others learn to do that as well, could teach parents how to care for their special needs children. There was a compassion in her. There was a comfort in dealing with people who were dealing with disabilities. She saw their wholeness. She saw their souls because she'd grown up seeing that. She was prepared for it by the muck and the mud and the challenges she came through in her family. There's a tremendous resilience in us to come through times like that, to deal with mud and muck and come out of them with insights and gifts and blessings to share with others. We're doing it all the time. We may not be aware of it, but we are doing it all the time. And sometimes that deep muck really comes up with really rich gifts for us to share with others. My sister has a minister friend, a Unity minister. His name's Reverend Michael Moran. he likes to say there's a lot of goo and good. Don't you love that? There's a lot of goo and good. Just like there's luck and muck. It's kind of a similar idea. And I think it's true. I think we've all experienced that. There's a great quote I've always liked by Carl Jung. Life flows from springs both clear and muddy. Life flows from springs both clear and muddy. We'd like them all to be nice and clear and pretty. But in fact, there's a lot of life in the muddy streams. There's a lot of rich nutrition in there, a lot of nourishment. There's a lot of fuel to grow new things and new selves too. And I think like the lotus flowers, our job is to trust, is to kind of hang in there when we're in the muck, to trust that there's a guidance, just like with the lotus flower, guiding us toward light. And might be a while where you're trying to penetrate through the darkness as you work your way up there, but that we're going to make it because opportunities arise, doors open, invitations come, sudden insights like Eckhart Tolle's will arise in our minds, and we will find the guidance coming for us that will realize we've got gifts to share from having come through that muck. We got something out of it, like a gold nugget, we kind of grabbed on the bottom of the ocean. There's a lot of comfort in the scripture about that, like this old one from Psalms 139. Where can I flee from your presence? Can't go anywhere and be apart from this power, this energy. If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in hell, you are there. To me, that's a promise and a declaration, an affirmation about no matter how messed up we get, our lives might be hell at the moment. No matter how messed up it gets, there's a power and presence with us, a creative energy that is going to help guide us up out of that muck and with something to share after having made that journey, with blessings to share. No matter what mishaps or messes we might experience, the power of God is at work in us, with us, guiding us toward new life, deeper selfhood, always with us, leading us in the path of life. Now that's my affirmation for the day. God guides me in the path of life. Would you like to join me in that? God guides me in the path of life. Let's take that into prayer for a moment. Affirm that truth deep within. However murky and dark and confusing the moments we are experiencing, we know and affirm this high truth that God is with us in the murkiest of depths, guiding us, leading us, bringing us divine insight, healing energy, enfolding us in that unfailing love that is with us always. So we trust. We know we're being guided moment by moment, and we are grateful. And so it is. Amen.